Hi everyone, welcome back. So in this video lesson today, let us understand the concept of risk. Risk is a very important topic for everyone in the software industry, but very specifically for the testers as well. So in this lesson, let us talk about what is risk and why understanding risk and being able to perform software risk analysis is a very critical skill for software testers. So let us understand what is risk. So what do you think about this? Why do you think people store money in banks rather than under their mattresses? And why do people carry umbrellas on a cloudy day? What do you think about it? Why people are storing money in banks instead of under their mattresses? Or on a cloudy day, why people, not many people, but a lot of people carry umbrellas? So what do you think about it? If you store money under your mattress, what can happen to you? You can have a risk of being robbed when you are not at home, or when you are not carrying an umbrella on a cloudy day, and if it rains that day, you have a risk of getting drenched in rain or getting stuck up in some place without able to move. So in our lives, we keep on encountering this kind of situations, a future negative consequence, and those things we call them as risks. And to avoid those risks or to minimize the inconvenience whenever that risk happens, we take a lot of precaution. So let us understand how it is important for software as well as in the software testing space. So how do we define risk? Risk is defined as a factor that could result in future negative consequence. Whenever we are talking about risk, we are talking about a future. If something that's happening, the negative thing right now happening, we can't call it as a risk. It is all about future negative result. So, or which has a negative consequence. So whenever we are talking about future, so there is a chance of that risk occurring or not occurring, and that is what we call it as likelihood of a risk event occurring or not. So risk is assessed both on its likelihood and if the risk occurs, what kind of inconvenience will be caused to us, or what kind of loss that can occur to us, or what kind of damage that can happen because the risk really occurred, and that is called impact. So the way we define risk is defined as a factor that could result in future negative consequences, and risk is assessed both on its impact and also likelihood that the event will occur. That is how we define risk. So in software systems, how risk we will have to use is that any potential failure that is occurring in software that can result in a damage or loss to the person who is using that software. So as testers, we always are worried about software risks or the software risks that could result because of the software failures. And what is the chance of that failure occurring? What is the impact of that occurring? We have to analyze very carefully before we start doing testing. Because if you look at testing is a sort of risk assurance activity. In fact, in our one of the testing principles earlier, we talked about testing is a context-based exercise, or testing is a risk-based exercise. And in order to answer a lot of questions about how much testing, how thoroughly we have to test, a lot of answers can be got from the analysis of risk related with the software failures. So before we move on, let us do a little bit of check on your understanding so far what we talked. So please look at the screen and rank the impact and likelihood of the following potential software failures. When we are talking about potential software failures, they are risks in a software, by selecting the appropriate checkboxes on the right. Okay. The first case study tells that, let's say NASA is installing navigation software to direct the Mars orbiter to its designated target. This is the first go live release of the software. This is the first time the testers have worked together on this project. So NASA is developing a navigation software that will be put on a Mars orbiter and it will go to Mars. And this is the first go live release of that software, and first time kind of testers have participated in this team. So now, based on this situation, now if at all a failure occurs, a risk of failure is there, then what is the impact of that software failure and what is the likelihood of the software failure? When we are talking about impact, we are talking about the amount of loss, damage that could take place if this risk occurs. And when we are talking about likelihood of the software failure, we are talking about the chance that there will be a failure in this software. So let us kind of rate it: high, medium, low. So what is your answer? In this kind of situation, what do you think is going to be the impact if at all software fails? So high, because this is a real go live software and that is being tested first time. So if at all a failure occurs, and also because it's a very important go live real software, so the impact is going to be very high. A lot of loss will happen to NASA. Now let us look at what is the kind of likelihood of this software failure to occur, the chance of software failing. So what is your rating on that? High or medium or low? Yes, you are right, it is high, because this is a very important go live project. That's why loss is going to be high, so impact is high. At the same time, first time testers are testing this, so they are inexperienced in testing this kind of software. So the chances of people making mistakes while they do tests are very high. That is why likelihood of software failure is also high. Let us look at another situation now. A space shuttle crew simulates transoceanic abort landing system for the first time. Again, this is for the first time. The simulation takes place on the ground simulator. It's a simulator. It's not a real live software. You have to understand that point. And the simulator software is the same as installed in the shuttle. Okay. So now what is the impact of this software failure? Compared to the first case, here we are testing a software that will be used inside a simulator. It's in a ground kind of experiment. So definitely the impact is not going to be as high as it was in the first case. So how do you rate the impact of software failure? Low. Compared to definitely the first one, it's going to be low. And likelihood of the software failure. If you have to look at for the likelihood of the software failure, you have to again look at the statement: space shuttle crew simulates transoceanic abort landing system for the first time. So they are doing for the first time. They did not have previous experience. They may be less skillful in developing this kind of software. So what is your opinion about the likelihood of a failure occurring? Is it high or medium or low? Yes, because they are doing it for the first time, the likelihood may be high. So what we are trying to understand here is that there are various risks. Whenever we are talking about a risk is about both the likelihood of risk occurring and also the impact if it were to occur. So based on that, we talk about the risk size. If both impact is high and likelihood is high, the risk is really big. If impact is low and also the likelihood is low, then the risk is low. We have to prioritize risks. So to understand that, this is very important concept. So as testers, we have to spend a lot of time to understand the concept of risk and why it's important. Because in the testing principles, we talked about testing everything is impossible. You will not have time to test every input and combinations of inputs and preconditions for any software. So you always have time to only execute a subset of tests. But which subset of tests should I execute out of lot of possibilities? You have to analyze based on the risk involved with the software. And the next point why as testers we should be good at understanding risk is how to decide and prioritize the testing order. Which I have 100 tests to test 10 features, but which feature will I start testing first? Which feature I will postpone it till later? That decision also you have to base it on your idea of risk and risk prioritization. The higher risk items will be tested first, the medium risk items will be tested in the middle, and the lower risk items will be tested last, and some lower risk test items may not be tested also. That is why to answer this question, you need to understand the concept about risk and be able to perform risk analysis. And very important question that will be asked as testers is how much testing to do. So again, to answer this question, we must understand the risk and relative risk elements within the software, and based on that only we can answer this question. So how much testing to do? It always depends on risk. If risk is very high, we have to do lot of testing. If risk is medium, we have to test in the medium range. If risk is low, we may not test, or we may test in a very light manner. So how much testing to do? It depends on risk. So these are very important things, and also how thoroughly we have to test each test item is also a very important question. So which techniques to apply for which type of test items? If there is a high risk kind of test item, we may have to apply very different kind of techniques, white box techniques, black box techniques, static techniques, some fag inspections. All those things are important if the risk is high, because better techniques will give better thoroughness. If the risk is low, we may not spend a lot of time applying variety of techniques. We may choose one or two lighter techniques and complete the testing. So these are the important questions as a tester you must answer. And how much to do testing, which tests to do first, which techniques to apply, all these questions can be answered only based on your understanding of risk of software failures. That is why this topic is important. So learn and have fun. Thank you very much.